Everybody.
Hey, Lisa.
It's Roxanne here.
Hello.
Hello.
Forgive me, I'm kind of on the go a little bit today, so it might be a bit of a shorter meeting. But I am excited for our President Veterans Day for sure. Roxanne, can I get you to share your screen? As you can tell, I'm on mobile right now. So
No worries. You can also turn your video off. No worries there. Can you see this?
yeah, I can see it. Awesome. For today's agenda, I would like to go over any really small things if need be. And then we can save most of the admin and project updates for next week, and then probably just get right into the BOF. Does that work for you, Roxanne?
Sounds good.
Good. So for the website updates, I did submit some changes, and you should have maybe down. That's fine.
You're breaking up a bit. I'm not sure if you'll see this, or if I only shared. Can you see the website, or is it still the? Is it still the agenda?
I can see the website.
Okay. So I tried to make it smaller so that we would have like a concise what we are, what is DataOps, why should you join? The reason I moved the contributors up was because of the join button, and I thought it was nice to have a visual and not just a wall of text. If we have a different visual, we can put it there. And then our goals, they were very long. I can add the whole description, or do you just want the bullet points as I put them? Let me know. And then I kept the rest the same, but I'm happy to update it again.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I think the bullet points are okay for now, actually. I do want to eventually expand on them, but my feeling is that each page eventually, and we're still in the early stages of really figuring out what each of these look like. I think we have a good idea of what we want to do with them, but things are liable to change. I think once people start working on them, they might realize what we're trying to do doesn't work or something similar. So eventually we'll these separate sub pages as well.
Okay. And is this long enough, or did you want more?
I think a little bit more is probably better, just because that's the first thing that people are seeing. And so if they don't get, then they should at least have a link to find more, if need be. But we could add a few more sentences in. I think that would be fine.
Okay, we can talk about it next time if you want. I think what we had before was longer. I put it here. Oops. It was this.
Yeah, can you at me on that part, and then I will probably try. That's a little bit more reflective of what we're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Workshop, I worked with Dan, and we'll host it on the 20th. And the LF certification, I got the G form that we would have to fill out to promote, to ask for one, and they have a lot of requirements. So I don't think we're there yet, but once we are, we can fill that out and then submit it to them. That's all I have. Did you have anything else, Lisa?
For the admin side, not right now. We're going to be getting more into it, I think about 2 weeks from now. Sorry, for context, everybody, I just started a new job this week, and so it's just been like a little bit hectic all over the place, and I had like less than a week between jobs, and so I'm still like running around. Thank you, everybody. I'll be announcing where I ended up joining about, yeah, like on Monday officially on LinkedIn, but apparently I can't be in these meetings without officially saying that it's Databricks. So hopefully nothing crazy comes from it and we get to all keep the peace.
Okay.
Thanks,
Should I
everyone.
stop sharing and then Victor, you can.
Yes, if that works for Victor, I know that I've been fairly hands off with the preparation for this this Birds of a Feather. So I do appreciate you taking the reins on it.
The biggest problem is you make it so fun. I don't think I can do it. You're like the really the center of the party, which I really cannot do. But I'll try to. This is the part I'm interested in, not expert in. But yeah, love to discuss about it.
Yeah, and just to kind of set the tone for everybody, you don't have to be an expert whatsoever to run these Birds of a Feather. I mean, I know Vivek literally learned the topic for the specific point of presenting it, and so I think that there's a lot of different conversations we can have, including at different levels. So please don't feel like you have to be the expert or know everything to present.
Yeah, I can start. So I think other than talking about Metastore, I want to probably start, probably two things I want to do. One is get everybody's impression what Metastore is, or why it's important for, especially what is metadata. Then at the end, probably we can discuss about, because we know that we're probably going to have some collaboration between DataOps initiative and DOK, Database on Kubernetes and Data Mesh ecosystem. So I think they would be good to go over at the end, maybe. So the Metastore, DataOps, and all those things we're doing here, in what area is that related? I think especially when it comes to Metastore, there are a lot of synergy, I think, that can be achieved. Yeah, so let's start from beginning and on what is Metastore. So this is my background. I worked for Oracle for 17 years, database guy for 30 years. So the relational database is my bread and butter. So when big data first came up, you can only do like using I don't know actually what to use. Let's assume it's Python, so like programming, and you really scan the data in a particular way, and then you do your analysis. So later on, there are things. I think the first Metastore, I know it's the first one. I said it's one of the first one popular. I think it's called Hive Metastore, which give you a metadata enough so you can actually, have all the information readily available, so you don't have to really programmatically mapping each field to your actual program. And so by doing that, you were later on you will be able to use like SQLs, etc., over like big data, right? So that's my really see that's where Metastore come from. So more and more Metastore become more and more important. For example, when you do, especially in the nowadays, right, with so-called agentic AI, and everything is done on the fly. How do you know that the data is there, right? So that means you have to get to the data dynamically by like do so-called automatic metadata discovery, I believe, so that you can actually get all the information needed and on the fly determine what data you need and how to process it. This is very important because I just, as Lisa said, I'm just learning on the fly. Because I've been involved in identity-related discussions about agentic AI, and if you don't know, agentic AI is the buzzword. People say that's really the future before AGI, and then. For one of the biggest problem for agentic AI is identity, right? How do you make sure the agent is actually authenticated properly, given the proper authorization and trusted, right? So when it comes to data, it is a problem, right? But, how much data you want to give it to it, right? Because it's no longer like predefined applications. Now it's actually doing on the fly. How do you determine on the fly that it's the data you need, and also you give the authorization, fine-grained authorization to the agent properly? All that really need metadata, right? So I'll stop there, maybe see what's your background and what do you think is metadata, and what is metadata store? You want to give it a try?
I can kick us off and then maybe call out some names and pass around to some folks. So for me, at least, I think the meta store and metadata idea is inherently really big, right? And this is because metadata can kind of be literally anything. And so the way that you define a meta store is really by having as metadata in one single repository as you can. And that metadata is broken down into several different components. There's physical metadata, which is like data about where certain pieces of data are stored in terms of the partition, things like that, how that access is being controlled, where it's cached, things like that. But also there's the logical meta, which is like the schema level and things like that as well. So this might be some column information, etc. But still like relatively close to interaction with the query engine. And then there's the like semantic metadata, which is the business glossary, the actual terms. And this is the stuff that I think humans have really taken over in terms of how do we create metadata to help humans understand what this data is. And when I think about that, it's really like the context for humans, right? If I add a business glossary to a particular data set, then that's really so that other humans can understand what this data means and can quickly understand what that context is. And we're still trying to figure out in a lot of ways how to do that for AI and how to do that for machines who are now probably accessing that data arguably more often in the future than actual humans. And what that looks like, I think, is really going into like the MCP and A2A kind of stuff, right? So that those APIs and the metadata that we expose there will eventually be ideally what's useful for those protocols. So as somebody who's been in the metadata space for a long time, it almost means nothing, the term data at this point, which is kind of hilarious because it means everything. And that's kind of like my first initial take. Maybe Kiara, if you want to chime in, or Vivek, anybody on the floor.
I have a question. Is it like a big index for your data?
In a way, my
index itself.
Go ahead.
You go ahead, Victor. Yeah.
Okay, so because as a relational database guy, index is, you can think of it in a way, because index, what index does is, at least for index for like a relational database like Oracle, index just give you a pointer, right? So you give first a predicate, right, where the name equal to Roseanne, right? That goes to that index in turn. Give you another pointer, which point to the table data, actual data block. So you're right, that is similar in that sense. So similar in the like a high meta store. You give some actual meaning, like same thing, like your name, and then in turn it point to, instead of relational table block, it probably going to like a parquet file. Right, so just that because the infrastructure is different. So this is actually the lower layer of a data catalog, how do you retrieve data, right? So
Right.
what Lisa said earlier is actually another thing is interesting is the business concept. Like you can search the data, but how is it related to your actual data? That's where I believe there's thing called there's a thing called a meta layer, right? So metadata layer. I'm sorry, that's not right. Semantic layer. Semantic layer is not only you understand the relate to the actual your predicate, the way the criteria used to search for the data to the location of the data, but it actually tell you exactly what it means for the business at that point, right? So that concept come primarily in, I believe, business objects. Business objects is when it first started, because in business objects, I think they coined that term semantic layer. So you basically know, like, based on the aggregations of the data, like how much sales you have for the past 12 years, right? What's this churn rate? Those kind of concepts that's important for business, and that's why the semantic layer is important. So now, actually, this is part where we can actually collaborate not only with the DOK, which is more about infrastructure, but more about the data mesh community. Because what data mesh community, what they're trying to do is to instead of each individual domain have their own expert, right? So they create their own business and make it a product and make it like a standard API. So all the different domains data can talk to each other. So this semantic layer, I think, is becoming very important. So so what we do here is to understand how to standardize like the workflow, the API, etc. But that's the same thing. What data mesh people is trying to do. So I think there's a data mesh has been. I'm not sure it's still very popular, but it used to be a very popular term. I think this is where we probably can discuss with Paul and the data mesh community how to collaborate. Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, Vivek, for cutting you off.
No. It's that actually gave me more time to think. For me, the way I perceive metadata is it's information about the data. For example, we have data in so many formats, holding so many different kinds of things these days. You can have an S3 bucket, which can have a metadata tag about what project it belongs to, what team it belongs to, what is the nature of the data. Is it something that requires secure handling? Is it personally identifiable information? Is it public information? And then what business value does it provide? There could be so many different kinds of this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Victor, but I perceive that to be the semantics of data, and that is just in an S3 bucket or a Google Cloud, any kind of storage bucket, object storage. And then when we move on to databases, every database again has a lot of metadata associated with it. Every single table might have more metadata associated with it. So all these things are defining the characteristics of the data. Maybe in a database, it can be what is the type of the file format? Is it Parquet? Is it Avro? Like, how is the data being stored? So if a company is in its early stages of maturity and they only have one or two data sources, I think it becomes easy to have a declarative way of saying that, hey, agent, do this, followed by that. But how Victor brought it out earlier, in the agentic world, if that really takes off and that becomes the next big thing, every agent, every single thing that is out there needs to know what is the metadata, like what kind of data do I need to perform this operation successfully? And for that, it needs to know what is the format of the data. And once it knows the format of the data, then it'll have to go and figure out, okay, this is Avro, so I will use this processing method. It's JSON, so I will use this processing method and things like that. And I think that is where the meta store comes into play, where I look at it as a catalog of all the metadata out there. And I don't anticipate us humans to be querying it and getting the information, but I see it more as a mechanism for other automated workflows to be relying upon to understand, hey, I have this LLM query coming in, or I have this plain text query coming in. Hey, tell me about the sales and for this company in this neighborhood during this period. It should be able to quickly tie all those things back and use the meta store to figure out, okay, what are all the things I need and how do I quickly get that data and then process it. So I see Metastore as a catalog of all the metadata for every single data storage out there.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. Exactly the same. So yeah, so for AI, I can also think of as I said, it's for every kind of data, right? So there are growing need for metadata store to be more dynamic. For example, when you in the past, like just when the metadata is first created, right? For me, at least for the relational database guy, is for someone else who want to use big data like Parquet, etc., to create a way to use those data in a way that they're used to, right? The SQL way. Now, it's in the age of the LLM and agentic AI, you can not, it's possible for the application not only to retrieve data, which is structured, and also like big data, which is kind of semi-structured. You're now consuming data that's totally unstructured, right? It's the email, the language, etc. And so, and in the future, with physical AI and so-called, I call it probably edge data ops, right? So you got robots that's interact with the people, reading that, talking to you and watching you, the videos and doing experiment, whether it's scientific or exploring the outer space. All that, it's impossible for a human to define what is metadata data. So the data ops in a way has to foresee that and actually go to create data on the fly intelligently using an algorithm per se. Yeah. So it is very exciting. Yeah. So I think Kiara, I think you're gonna say something.
Yeah, just to make sure I'm understanding and on the same page, what's the question again?
Yeah, we're discussing about like what is metadata to you, and especially nowadays with all the things that's happening, LRM, agentic AI, from the history of metadata to what do you see in the future? Just anything based on your background. What do you think the metastore plays and metadata plays in the whole picture?
Oh yeah, I agree with the same definition that you and Vivek kind of have. As I was thinking about this though, with how agents would access this data, my ops like brain triggered, especially when it came to, as you were talking about earlier, just dealing with privacy and then also monitoring for this type of stuff. Like as far as I understand, and then also scaling, because if we're really going to do the Internet of Agents thing, like MIT is proposing, we're going to have to deal with like millions of agents accessing things in real time. So I was like, oh, maybe we need some type of, similar to cloud systems, there's some type of IAM, like identity and access management. But the issue with that is that's a lot to keep up with. So I'm wondering if policy as a code is going to become more important in this era, especially when it comes to dealing with PII. So if some agents have a certain tag, they'll be able to access or see PII, whereas some won't. And then also just lifecycle management, because how can you track when an agent is active or inactive, and taking away and adding access to them as well. And then, of course, as well as just the monitoring part. So the part that worries me the most is, of course, with anybody when they're trying to access data, is the intent. And with agents, that can be kind of hard to judge, because how do you know if an agent is actually going to be using the data appropriately, especially if that agent can like chain tools or request data from other agents? So I think that like contextual metadata is going to be extremely important, especially when we're talking about like purpose-based access controls and making sure, the agentic systems that we're building out are explainable and have auditable paths for tracking all of this. Because as we see the behavior of some of these agents, they will try to, blackmail people in a span of a second, or either they'll act a certain way because they want someone to continue to use them or be pleased with them. So they'll, either skew, or and even then, what if they actually get the truth from some metadata, but then they skew it because they are trying to appease whoever their user, whoever it is that they're would be interacting with or giving information to. Yeah, that was, I'm rambling, but those were some of the thoughts on my mind as soon as I heard about the Metastore and what it means for agents.
Yeah, you had a very great point when it comes to the policy, how to do it dynamically. Because in the agentic AI, the biggest problem is kind of a trust and delegation, right? So when an agent runs something, how do you know it's doing it on your behalf? And because there's a lot of regulation, I know regulation is a kind of debate depending on where you are, but still there's a question of if agent do something bad, is that because of you, and are you responsible for it, right? So that's regardless of regulation, that's going to trigger some legal issues. So what on the other hand, because agent want to be, like you said, the MIT initiative getting all the agent talking to each other, this is actually not just MIT, people doing it all over the world now. The problem for that is when the agent talk to each other without human in the loop. You can have human in the loop, but it's impossible, right? There's already a term for that. I forgot what the term. I think it's called what is called something related to just it's impossible for the human to be reviewing every transaction between the agents, every conversation. And so you not know that term? I forgot what the term is for that. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I
definitely,
forgot.
You had a comment too, if you want to sneak it in.
yeah. So yeah, so having a kind of a policy that is like for the people to design the policy, I think is very important, because this way you don't have to have still be kind of legit agent, the human who designed the agent to be responsible, running the agent to be responsible, but at the same time it doesn't have to be in the way for the agent to do its work.
Yeah, so with that being said, I wonder if intent will somehow have to be handled for inside of the meta stores too. Like intent modeling, that might be a little OD, but I mean, we're not even very good at like dealing with access control for humans. So imagine doing this for millions of agents. So, yeah, it's lots to think about.
And I think you brought up a very important point about the need for an auditable trail to be present, some kind of a data lineage. I think in this agentic world or this fully automated world, every action has to be justified, why that action is being taken, and all that data has to be stored. I don't know if it'll be an agentic meta store somewhere, which will, its sole purpose is to capture all the information about the why behind an action being performed by an agent. And then I think we'll need another mechanism in place to verify that what is being logged is actually accurate and it's not a hallucination or something which is intentionally misleading. But it also makes me very scared because they can scale so quickly. They can, I think it might become that problem of scale where you have so many things running continuously, and how do we go about accurately tracking down which agent is taking which path to accomplish what, and then verifying the why behind it as well. So maybe there'll be a new kind of meta store that will take birth.
Yeah, I think to that point too, and this is funny because the word Metastore has come to be so synonymous with catalogs, but I think some of the early attempts at creating metastores around the semantic layer was actually the concept of a graph database. And that's what a graph was used for, right? To store relationships between data. And then at a certain point, everybody tried to implement a gigantic graph over their entire data, and that was the complete maintainability nightmare and also really difficult, right? Like it just was not very performant. It was very slow to query the data. But there is like I think something in between where it's either going to be the next generation of graph or the next generation of Metastore that should be able to link data or take whatever concepts of digital twins and things like that. What that looks like in practice, I'm not sure, but I don't know who else like does not see graph as much out in the world. And what the promise of graph used to be. I also think that there's a lot of query languages out there who try and do query as graph for typical structured data. And so maybe there's just no need to actually store as graph anymore, but I haven't gone super deep into that world.
Yeah, graph is, to me, it's a structure, it's a predefined way of information flow, right? Which in a way, predefined workflow or operation workflow is similar to me. So I'm not sure, Dan, how much you've been, you heard, you joined, you rejoined late at least. You want to give your thought when it comes to Metastore and DevOps and any operation workflow? Okay. So Dan is trying to find his unmute button. So so this is where, yeah, I feel that there's so when we're talking about data ops, I'm just giving a thought about it, right? So we're in this group, we're talking about data ops, but we already have other ops. We get GitOps, DevOps, ML ops, data ops. When it comes to Metastore, what do you think is Metastore's role in the whole ops? Because I'm sure there's a lot of overlap, for example, right? Because when we're talking about ML ops, or any ML SecOps, or AI ops, all those involve flow of data. What do you think the differences between those ops and data ops, and what's Metastore's role in that whole workflow?
I think of the role of Metastore to be equivalent to what unstructured object storage currently is, where you can store anything in object storage, whatever cloud you choose or in-house, it can store anything. And similarly, I look at Metastore to be playing that role in this entire architecture within data operations, within any operational framework, where it will have information about every data point, be it an Airflow pipeline, be it customer data, whatever data is stored for a given company, all that information will be stored in a centralized way in a Metastore.
Go ahead, Ann.
Sorry, just fixed the issue. So once we're on the topic of AI ops, data ops, and all of that, I think that these are primarily DevOps. Like you're deploying, you're developing, but in the traditional software development domain is now kind of split into what we call AI ops is just that whatever models you have trained, you just integrate it in your software development lifecycle, right? So that's pretty much it. Otherwise, it's just making these more fancy terms out of all of this. You're calling it AI ops or data ops and all of that. But data ops, in terms of this, is much different because it's like a foundation backbone on which your AI would operate. So your meta store would be when you're dealing with data and all of that. That is where especially in data ops, you're managing data assets, you're managing data schema, your then there is like what do you call it, maybe governance as a code or that kind of stuff. And that is where it would come in. Or in AI ops, maybe you're classifying events or enabling some sort of what you can say, correlation between your data pipeline services, or mapping events to your data lineage. Basically, you're trying to find the single source of truth for data ecosystem. That is where your like meta store like Unity or Hive, whatever, that would come in. But as far as the other terms that you're talking all about, to me, they're all basically DevOps. Um, in that sense, that even DataOps is basically DevOps with data focus. AI ops is DevOps with AI focus. I hope I kind of made my point clear on that one.
Yeah. So there are gray areas though. Like for example, now is the dynamic. At least there's effort now to create metadata on the fly, right? By doing auto discovery and creating metadata on the fly. By creating metadata on the fly, which is similar to creating a new table with whole new column, etc. So what do you think? Are those still data ops or DevOps?
Look, this all of this is when your domain is more DevOps in the domain of data is data ops. So when you're talking about making these tables and all of that stuff, that kind of takes the DevOps application into data realm. So I would call it data ops in that sense. But just to be clear, whenever we talk about these ops kind of terms, because eventually all of these things, they reside on something. They reside on a cloud, they reside on a container, they reside on a cluster. So it's all DevOps with a particular application focus on what. That is how it would go. So what you just said, that would then go for data ops. So but underlying, it's all DevOps to me. That is, I hope you get the point.
Okay, yeah. Anyone else have a question for Dan when it comes to ops and metadata source?
I view everything as data ops because at the end of the day, it is data which is driving systems, decisions, and all frameworks. They run based on data, whether it is Terraform code, whether it is Tofu, whatever it is. I think it's a question of, do we want to call that DevOps or do you want to call it data ops? DevOps was the original thing, but whether it is AI ops, ML ops, all these things, I think Dan put it very well that all these things are operations, but they're focused on a specific domain. In one, you're enhancing ML as a platform. In another, we are probably providing capabilities to allow easier access and management of data, be it databases or be it outside of databases, be it a data streaming framework. So yeah, I think I perceive everything as data ops because initially I was thinking more of, hey, I manage an ML ops team, but at the end of the day, hey, is it actually ML? What is underlying it? It's all data. So it's, to me, everything is data ops. And I think meta will play a very important role in.
Yeah, I do believe that, but just to be clear on that, the way I come from is that since my background kind of starts with system administration and from infrastructure side, and then I kind of transitioned into this AI and data landscape. So just to be clear, you need an infrastructure first, right? And that is where the DevOps guys come in. Okay, they set up their everything. The data is not even in the question right now because unless you do not have an infrastructure in place to host everything, whether you're doing it on prem, you're going to do it on cloud, you're going to do it hybrid, whatever. In that case, it starts with DevOps. Now, once you're infrastructure and DevOps setup is, your pipelines are set up. What are you building it for? Is it just to build some Hello Kitty page? So that's a simple like web development, and that kind of goes in that realm. But if there are more nuanced and complex operations involved, which involves dealing with data pipelines, data cleaning, data warehousing, data lakes, meta stores, and all of that, that is now that kind of takes your DevOps and it takes you towards data ops. That data ops is in general fueling your AI ops. Okay, so because behind AI again there's a lot of data, so that is another way to look at it that way. What you call LLM ops and AI ops, often it is just software engineering, which is just simply using is basic software engineering that is simply using APIs from third parties, unless you're hosting the model yourself and your that is something that I would be calling the OG or pro AI or LLM ops that you're hosting it. And I think for it would be like Meta, OpenAI, and Anthropic, and these guys would be much into this. But otherwise, the other softwares or SaaS would be using their APIs. So that kind of puts in my mind, it kind of puts that in that realm. So the data is not even in question unless you do not have an infrastructure. That is the DevOps layer in itself. And when you start working on either on a simple web development or you're working on building more complex data pipelines with data warehouse lakes and stores and everything, so that is where the data ops concept comes in. So yeah, just wanted to kind of add in that this is where I kind of differ with Vivek on that. Rest, yeah, all I agree.
Oh, Kira, just 30 seconds and then I'll hand it off to you. I think this also begs the question of what is data? If we look at data as database related data or object storage data, then that's data. But if you look at everything as data, be it the Terraform code you use for building these pipelines and architectures, whether it is on-prem, off-prem, that is where I'm overgeneralizing to call everything to be data. But I will add this for a future discussion. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no problem. For me, I mean, considering I do what DevOps, been doing it for a little bit of time now, I really just see DevOps as like the overarching, like, I guess you can say principle, or either just the framework. And then AI, ML, data, all of those, they have They're just developed around, they're just like nuanced DevOps, the way I see it. Because like Dan said, they all involve infrastructure, but what is this infrastructure specifically for? And of course, depending on what it is that you have to handle for, no matter what, it still has the same DevOps principles, whether you're building out CI/CD, observability, dealing with compliance, testing, and all of that. It's just around one centralized or specialized field, if that makes sense. But no matter what, there is going to be infrastructure. All the principles of DevOps is going to be there. A lot of people don't like when you say, oh, DataOps is just DevOps for data, or, oh, the LLM ops is just DevOps for LLMs, because they feel like it takes away from the fact that it's the subfield of LLMs. But no, I mean, the DevOps principles are there. You just want to make sure it's specialized so people can understand exactly what you're building, pipelines and infrastructure and all that stuff for. So, and I mean, if we want to get into the data part, I also think that everything is data. Even when you're building out software, it's all around, dealing and gathering data, whether you're sending it through APIs, building APIs, even with infrastructure, your config maps and everything for whatever containers you have. What's in there? Data. So, I mean, but that's just, to me, it's just minute in the grand scheme of things. But that's my take on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I feel this is why this platform, that this DataOps initiative in the RFAI, I mean our CDF. I'm sorry, I'm using RFAI too much in CDF. So it's a great platform for us to discuss about this, and even probably in the RF certification and course, we can even starting by like defining based on our understanding what is data ops and relationship with other ops, and we can then publish it, not necessarily formally, but at least get opinion from all around the world, different organizations, to see what do they think, and get the just by clarifying this one concept could be very, very valuable. So definitely, that was an interesting discussion. Thank you. So now that we have discussed about ops, we still have 15 minutes. I want to continue the kind of referring to our collaboration with Paul's ecosystem. Yeah, rather than just say survey. Yeah, I think survey is good to. You know what? We probably should do that. Go ahead. Probably we should just create a document, a survey. What is data ops? So I think what Dan, Vivek, and Pierre, what your input are great, to the point. We need to get those great thoughts into a document and float around into the whole Linux Foundation, not only CDF but the whole Linux Foundation. Get everybody's input. Roseanne, do you think that'd be a good next step? What is data ops?
Yeah, do you want like options or just open text box?
Yeah, we probably just create a Google Doc. This is not.
Yeah.
This is.
But I mean, like when you ask the question, do you want to give them options to choose what they think data ops is, or you want to leave it open and they type it in?
I think both, right? Because the goal is to, number one, get some input, not only on what we think are the choices. There could be other things that we haven't thought about. That's number one. Number two, this is I think I have ADHD. I suddenly forgot what is number two. But yeah, I think it's good to create a document like this and just floating around and even beyond CDF, so people know this is, oh, actually I remember what is number two. But people would come here to join us and actually come together and create a certification and course for what is data ops. I think that's the first step to kind of commercialize or do advertising for what we're doing here. So when it comes to the collaboration with Paul's organizations, earlier we talked about the data mesh, which is very, very relevant, especially when considering there are metadata nowadays that's kind of either federated, distributed, all those keywords, right, including how do you do it on the fly, on the edge. But the other community we are collaborating initially, actually, at least, is the Kubernetes data on Kubernetes Foundation. Right? And what that foundation does is they focus on, as you know, the database used to be only on like in your server, single instance server. Later on, we got virtual machine. Now we got containers, right? And the Kubernetes cloud native project initially, when it was created, it was supposed to be so-called cow rather than dog, meaning you kind of throw it away, right? Because you just run it, and after a while, you just if it has some problem, you have a new version, just start a new instance, new cluster instead of or at least a new pod instead of existing pod. Then there, but because of popularity of Kubernetes, now there are a lot of initiative to run database on Kubernetes to leverage the ecosystem that Kubernetes is for, because they're not only it's not only a like a workload orchestration, it's also becoming very, very important for like any ops, right? Running AI ML workloads, especially inference, etc. On Kubernetes. So it's a very important platform. Now, when we're talking about Metastore, Metastore used to be, again, is the database, right? But the now we want to run it on Kubernetes ecosystem, because by being on Kubernetes, you can run it not only in your on-premise, you can move it anytime. You can move it, supposedly, at least in theory, from on-premise to a public cloud and private cloud and to a different cloud, kind of hybrid cloud situation, right? So those are all use cases for metadata store in a DOK, data on Kubernetes use cases. What do you think? When we talk with those people, with expert on whether it's Postgres, on Kubernetes, and I think even Oracle is on Kubernetes. I think there's a project on that. What do you think we can talk about? Just the stuff we talked about earlier, right? How do you extend that to explain to DOK people that this is actually? I think there's a lot of synergy, but I want to hear your thoughts about it.
Sorry, I didn't understand. Like, I'm going through this tool as well, DOK, Data on Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, sorry, what's exact? I didn't understand the question exactly.
Yeah, so just the data ops operations, the Metastore we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Instead
Yeah.
of them running like a traditional, like whether it's physical hardware or virtual machine, now we're going to run the database on container, right? And also container is now in a cluster, it's kind of distributed, right? So how when you think about metadata storing those ecosystem, and also considering everything that's all the all the workload. I don't know if you follow Kubernetes or not. There's a lot of things happening in that world, especially AML is very popular, right? What's your thought on the synergy between the two, the data ops and DOK community?
I remain on my point. Uh, so a few days ago, I forgot the name. We have been fighting along. I'm more on pro containerization, and I'm kind of against monolithic architectures for my own set of reasons and all of that. So this is actually a very good idea. There is a sync in that sense that you're deploying your data pipeline on Kubernetes. Although for a smaller pipeline or a MVP kind of pipeline, it would be more of an overkill. But if you're talking about scalability and robustness and all of that, obviously you would need it containerized in a more modular, in a portable fashion that you can deploy it. And obviously Kubernetes allows you to manage your workloads dynamically and all of that. And again, when you have like streaming data or bigger batch sizes and all of that, you might want some tool that would actually handle the scalability and all of that. So yeah, it has a definite synergy to it. But then a lot of on the dev side of, speak on the dev side of things, that people still tend, I know a lot of smaller companies that would still go for the traditional monolithical architecture, and they would argue that it's not really required and all of that. But and I think that pretty much comes from their lack of understanding of how Linux and how Dockers and how LXTs and how all of these things work. But if there is something that allows you to build your data pipelines and manage them by default on Kubernetes without worrying about the DevOps side of things, yeah, that is something we can really kind of do a lot of benefit for the DataOps community as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's good. So Roseanne, I'm sure is because Roseanne has a conversation with Paul, I think last week. I think there are a lot of synergy can be there, but I think we need to provide Roseanne more background information on our thought about where the synergy is. So Roseanne, do you think what do you think you like collected those ideas in a Google Doc or just on a Slack?
I was thinking, like, do we invite Paul first or do we collect this first? Paul is the data on Kubernetes like person. He's very interested in collaborating. They already have like a big community. It's 5 years old. So I think the idea is that we collaborate with them a little bit on maybe a blog post or something, and then we also get some of their community folks to come and help us achieve our goals. I mean, obviously ours is not Kubernetes only, but they might have insights that we would find useful. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Anyone else?
I see okay to be a part of, or rather, a capability of data operations. That is how I perceive it. So I think we are sort of designing the principles, and I think their focus will be more on the implementation. For example, internally we run Kafka on Kubernetes on production. We had a lot of pushback, but touch wood, we've been running production stuff for 3+ years now. We moved out of Confluent and then into this. So I see DOK as the implementers of the policies which we ideally would be defining. So I think there is value in us discussing these things internally first and then pulling in them for their ideas or opportunities for collaboration, and how do we go forward from here.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. So DataOps is the vision and the basic principles that are laid up, and Kubernetes is one of the expression of those vision or the implementation of those vision statements or principles. Okay, you might be able to do it monolithically, or you might be able to do it in a containerized way. One of the ways to orchestrate a containerized setup is Kubernetes. So yeah, that's brilliantly put by Vivek. I agree.
Okay, Kira, you have any thought about Kubernetes?
Yep, I agree the same way. Almost think of us as like governance. And then as we were saying, like they do the implementation and things of that nature. We do like the strategy and all that stuff behind it. And I think that actually frees up a lot of like time and like mental space for them. And then also the same thing on our end, since we both have our own kind of separate lanes, even though they overlap a bit.
Victor, do you know when you'll see if you're accepted to DOK Day?
Don't know yet. It will probably be at least 2-3 more weeks. Yeah, we don't. That's either way. I think we don't have to wait for that. So one thing, if you're not aware of, DOK focuses mostly on running database on Kubernetes. So I'm sure each of the products have their own, data ops or whatever ops they have behind it. I agree that I think you have a great point that we kind of define the methodology, right, and then they kind of implement it in their each individual products. But overall, the DOK is for like how do you run a database? For a while, like Postgres was talking about, like there's a how to run it properly, because Kubernetes itself is like a cacao, right? How do you save the data so data persistency, backup recovery, disaster recovery, that's the topic that's been really the main topic in that ecosystem. So they probably had not thought about how the data ops really works in that ecosystem. That's probably where our collaboration can have some good synergies there. So Kiara, you gonna say something?
Okay, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Because, yeah, I've looked at some of their webinars or like their meetups they put on YouTube. And I've noticed that some of them were starting to use, like, I believe someone from Strimzy came and showed how to run like a Kafka instance on Kubernetes. So I wasn't sure if they were starting to branch out. But data ops is much more than just databases and data storage. So I don't think there would be too much overlap. Yeah, it just sounds like methodology around data ops in relation to databases or at least data stores.
Awesome. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Vivek, Dan?
Yeah, I was just thinking that when we're talking, we often talk more on Postgres or Redis, that kind of database. But I think that when we're talking about data ops, it should be the principles and the vision that should be there. It should encompass SQL, NoSQL, time series, vectors, and all these kind of things. So we might want to dive deeper on that end as well, and also then how to work around with PubSub and data lakes and all of that. So it should not be just tables and rows that we're querying through SQL, but it should cover a lot more type of data and databases, whether it is in table form or it is just no SQL form documents and metadata form. So that is something that it should all encompass. Yeah, I was just thinking that.
I agree. It's not only a data in table, but actually data streams, etc. All kinds of
Data
data.
streams,
Yeah.
video, audio, and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. So we're actually close to the end. I think so. Roseanne, I think we probably when we were talking about, I think we probably not only involve DOK but data mesh community as well. I'm thinking maybe have a planning meeting with Paul first. We can do that in the same way we're doing here, kind of birds of feather in the deep DOK, or have a just private meeting discuss what to do next. I feel that the best way is to maybe have Lisa to present something first about overall, what is DataOps initiative is for. Then we can have a kind of birds of feather in the same meeting or next meeting, but involve not only DOK, because in a way, data mesh community actually is actually also have I think even stronger synergy than DOK, but both managed by Paul.
Yeah, we were invited to speak there if we want to, so we can tell Lisa and she can present our initiative and then we can see. As Vivek said, we can keep our group more separate. I invited Paul, and if he ever wants to join, he can join, but we can start there.
I like the vision which is building out and the framework. We have data operations and all these different things, be it data mesh, be it metastores, be it DOK, all these things, I think they will fit very well. They'll align very nicely with the larger data operations landscape which we are building out, that combined with the data ops maturity model to help companies decide how I'm trying to accomplish this, what tool is right for me, what is my maturity level, and that combined with what Sage Dan was putting together a few weeks ago, that whole landscape of data ops where that fits into the play. I think once we have all of that, I think then if you're able to present it maybe in a few months or so,
I think yeah, it might be too soon. Like, is that what you're saying, Vivek? We wait a little bit.
At least again, selfishly, because I'll be out for the next 1 month, I'll be traveling. I'll try to join a few sessions, but I'll be out for the next month, meaning I'll be missing the next 2 meetings. But I feel it's shaping up really well. And once we are able to slot all these different things based on our vision, again, there are so many ways to organize everything, but based on how we as a group see it, I think once we have that in place, then we'll be able to pull different people in. And
I agree. And I'll be off next week as well. And a lot of people, it's summer for the northern folks. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, at the top of hour, so I guess we can.
I'll start the
call it a day.
G4 for the survey and we can go from there. Thank you all.
Have a good
one.
facilitating, Victor, and thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a great week.